Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Mike Urban. I'm sitting with none other than Mr. John Deaton. John is running for Senate, and I'm excited to interview him. And I think you guys are going to learn a lot from his history and what he stands for. So, John, appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you, brother. It's one of those things where people come up to me and I'm always surprised at who watches the channel, including you. I just do what I do. I just do what I do, and I like talking about the issues, and I hope that you guys could solve them. That's that's the thing. That's
the plan. You know, we got to first win.
Yeah.
And then get a seat at the table, and then start actually effectuating policy in this state.
Sure. So you grew up in Detroit, correct?
I did a subsection called Highland Park, which is surrounded completely by Detroit. It's if you look it up, at one point it was considered one of the greatest. It's one of these stories of American history that's kind of just sad and tragic. Henry Ford opened his first Model T plant in Highland Park, this subsection of Detroit, had the first Sears and Roebuck headquarters, the headquarters of Chrysler. That was in the 50s and all that. But by the time I was born, which was 1967, it become pretty much destitute. Those plants had closed down. And it unfortunately ranks in the top worst neighborhoods in the country for the last 50 years.
That's a sad story. So you're saying that originally there was probably a lot of wealth in this town.
Absolutely.
And things were good. And then they closed factories, they moved out, and pretty much what happened is exactly what you explained. It just kind of went downhill. Yeah,
absolutely. I write about it in my book. You know, after they closed the plant in like the late 50s, by the late 60s and early 70s, you know, white flight had taken place.
Yeah.
Outside of that neighborhood, it became predominantly a black neighborhood, and impoverished. You know, my father was a deadbeat dad. He abandoned us in that neighborhood, and so my mother, God bless her, was a single mother on welfare and food stamps. You know, at that time with 5 kids, trying to make it, and I have some scars from it, you know.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. Now, you have brothers and sisters, correct?
I do. I have total of 5 brothers and sisters, 6 of us. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. And so, I mean, as I said in my acceptance speech, you know, I gave a few highlights of how difficult it was. 6 years old, I watched my mother get stabbed in a mugging. They wanted her purse. It had our rent money. It had our grocery money. She said no. The mugger stabbed her in the back in front of me. She laid there bleeding out almost. I was 6. Unfortunately, 3 years later at 9, a child predator who should have never been on the street began abusing me, and pretty brutally. And bought my silence because said if my mother or anyone found out what he was doing to me, he'd kill her. Now you can imagine, Mike, after seeing her almost bleed out at 6, what that does to a child's mind. And it, so I endured it. My mother actually never knew about it. She died not knowing about the child rape and all that kind of stuff. My siblings didn't know about it. Something I just buried inside me until I wrote about it in my book. My best friend, Derek, 17 years old. You know, it's funny, I can talk about getting raped and I don't get emotional.
Yeah.
I started talking about my friend 40 years ago. I started talking about Derek, and I get emotional sometimes. But he died shot 4 times in a drive-by when I was 17. And my first day of high school, had a gun shoved in my mouth, bumped into a guy looking for class. Highland Park High School was like the first high school in the country that had metal detectors. And next day, I was a high school dropout, just like everyone. My brothers and sisters before me were high school dropouts. And the story I tell people about what drives me, you know, I was on Fox Business one time. They said, John, what's one of your reasons for success? Why you overcome all this? And I said, my hatred of poverty drove me. I I couldn't find a high school. People got to understand this is pre-Google years.
Yeah,
right? Sure. I couldn't find a high school to go to, and obviously we're poor. And my mother caught me crying, devastated. It's like 4 months of being out of school. And she said, "Why are you so upset?" And I said, "Mom, I've got to go to high school to go to college." And she said, "Well, just do what your brother did. Work till you're 17. I'll sign the papers. You join the military." That was our ticket out of the hood. And I said, "Mom, I don't want to do that. I want to go to college. I have to graduate high school." And my mother, God bless her, strongest person I know, my hero, put her arms around me to console me and told me, "I'm sorry, son, college just isn't for people like us." That's what poverty does. It's someone as beautiful and strong as my mom stripped her of her self-esteem, that we were like some subclass humans,
Sure.
right? We were like this white trash from the hood, that just college wasn't in our future. It wasn't meant for people like us. And so I remember that day like it was yesterday, because it just did something to me. It impacted me at my core. And I got lucky. A high school principal in St. Mary's of Royal Oak, about 8 miles out of the hood, public transportation. And I sat with him, and he agreed to cut the tuition in half from $1,400 a year in this 1981.
Yeah, sure.
To $700 if I played 2 sports, maintained a high GPA, and was active in the church. And got a job washing dishes after football practice, and paid my way through high school and then college, and took a couple years off after graduating college, and because I wanted to come to Boston. And so I drove a forklift during the day, waited tables at night, and then came to Boston. And I'll be honest, I had no connection to Massachusetts until that point, except for one thing. I was the biggest Larry Bird fan that there ever was. And so got to Boston, and my true story, and I'm still friends with them today, Jose and Miguel, security guards at New England School of Law. And but I was on a tight budget. And so I go to them and I said, "Listen, guys, I don't know anything about Boston. Where do you recommend a guy that looks like me not live?" And Miguel and Jose thought about it, and they said, "Well, you probably should stay out of Roxbury." And my next question was, how do I get to Roxbury? Right. And so that's where I lived, and found some cheap rent, and graduated from New England School of Law 3 years later.
It's stories like yours. I always like hearing about, people's history, their experiences, to really see what drives them. And I find that most interesting, because I feel like different people that live different experiences, they give back to certain things that they decide to get involved in. And I feel like that's why, I'm happy to be sitting here with you, because I feel like you're one of those people that has had these experiences, good, bad, a mix of the two. And you decided to go above what the status quo was at that time. And you did your own thing. You paid your way through high school, you went to college, you got your law degree, and then you eventually started your own law firm, correct?
Yeah. I ended up, it's ironic, because when my mother brought up going in the military, to bypass high school, I was like, I don't want to do that. When I was in the Marine Corps, the New England School of Law, I realized, like, I'm going to achieve the American dream. Like, it's going to be tougher than I thought. Probably, I knew that it maybe take me longer to get out of debt and all that. But I really am the American dream, and so I wanted to serve. And my personality is, the Marine Corps is the toughest. So that was the only branch for me, to be honest. And so I joined the Marine Corps in between. Oh, you did join the Marine Corps. 3rd year law school. And so I was a lawyer first in the Marine Corps, judge advocate, which is also ironic, because in 1992, the movie A Few Good Men came out with Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon, Jack Nicholson. So everyone wanted to be a JAG lawyer, right? And so it was pretty competitive. And something I'm really proud of is that I tell everybody, I wasn't smart enough to get into Harvard. I certainly couldn't afford Harvard Law, but I beat out Harvard Law students, BC Law, BU Law, Suffolk Law, Northeastern Law, because the Marine Corps only gave one contract for the judge advocate slot. And it was pretty competitive. Each school competed, and I beat all those other students. So the Marine Corps chose me to represent the Commonwealth for the 1994 judge advocate law contract. And so I was a judge advocate for 7 years in the Marine Corps as a lawyer. After 7 years, I got out and then became a practicing attorney, opened my own law firm.
And your law firm does personal injury, correct?
Yeah, it's real specialized. I've been representing working families against multi-billion-dollar insurance companies and corporations, people who get mesothelioma and lung cancer. I've represented electricians. I've represented sheetrockers, auto mechanics, shipyard workers, insulators, anybody who exposed to asbestos who got cancer from it. And I've done a few other things, other product liability, but 90% of my practice has been focused as a mesothelioma lung cancer lawyer here in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut and New York for about 30 years. And that's something that I take pride in because I've sat at the table of, whether it's a turbine tech guy who worked at Sandwich Power Plant, I've sat at their table and I've gotten to know the working class, working families across the Commonwealth as a lawyer and represented, fought for them in court. Now I think I understand what they need to fight for them in the Senate.
So your Senate race, we have Ed Markey and we have Seth Moulton. You've challenged them to a three-way debate. Has anybody accepted this debate?
Seth did.
Seth did. Okay.
I challenged both of them, and then he responded that he would agree on one condition, that I didn't insist. If Ed Markey chose to sit it out, I'd still debate him. And I'll debate Seth any day, any place, anywhere. I'll debate Markey. And I think it's healthy for, I would love for us to go across the Commonwealth.
Sure.
And let's do town halls. Let's answer questions. Let's give the people of Massachusetts a real look. Do I think Ed Markey is going to agree? Probably not. We haven't heard from his camp yet. So I would expect sometime soon we'll be announcing a couple debates between me and Seth, and hopefully Ed will show up. Maybe the poll that showed that just came out, I think yesterday, that showed it a little bit closer between him and Seth and Markey might make him feel like he needs to debate. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, he's a little bit MIA sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he could find Brockton with the GPS. Or any other city here.
Yeah. So what made you want to get to this point? Obviously, you've had your experiences as a kid. You had your experiences in school, the military, and obviously representing people with mesothelioma. My father-in-law's best friend passed away from that. He was a plumber.
Yep.
It affects a lot of the trades. Obviously, it's really bad. So I've seen, not necessarily directly, but indirectly of what it caused. Right, and it's sad. It's really sad. So what are you bringing to let's ask you this question. This is a good one.
Yep.
What's your if you were to get in, what's your number one thing? What if you had one thing that you could do while you're there, what would it be and what would your focus be?
If you only limit it to one thing, I'd have to say it would be my Deaton, Washington Clean Hands Act.
Okay.
Which is cleaning up the corruption and the grift that we're seeing in Washington. If you limit it to one thing. Now that act is act, it seeks term limits, obviously. It seeks single issue bills instead of these 1,000-page bills.
Where they throw things in.
Ukraine funding and Taiwan with Social Security and education. It was like,
it's crazy.
And veterans. How about just each bill should be 5 to 10 pages.
Yes.
And it should have one issue. It would eliminate insider trading, whether it's crypto, whether it's stocks. It would end regulatory capture. What I mean by that is, right now we have people who are the chairman of the FDA on Friday, and they resign. And on Monday, they're on Pfizer's board. Or they're in charge of the Security Exchange Commission, and they resign, and now they're on like the biggest Apollo Group board. It is so incestuous and so captured. And so a statutory bar that stops that. You shouldn't go to Washington and be a lobbyist. I mean, be a congressman for 2 years and then turn into a professional lobbyist. There should be a ban to stop that from happening. If you don't pass the budget, you don't get paid. If you shut down the government, you don't get paid. So if it was limited to one thing, it'd probably be that, because I think a lot of our corruption and the conflicts of interest and all that, obviously I would love, I have an energy plan for Massachusetts, a housing plan. I got a plan to reform student loans. I got so many things, fresh ideas that I think are necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, if the real reason is like, John, why are you doing this? I'll tell you. When you live the life I've lived, you don't want to be one of the last people of a generation that was born into extreme poverty and made it. Right? When you see young people, their future, their prosperity has been stolen by these career politicians. And I mean, Mitch McConnell, I don't care if he's a Republican, he's part of the problem. Chuck Schumer, part of the problem. Ed Markey, part of the problem. Nancy Pelosi, part of the problem. These career politicians who have went to Washington, they've been subject to this grift. They've made themselves multimillionaires. They've debased our currency to the point where inflation is so bad. I mean, it's why I said in my announcement, people in their 20s and 30s are working 2 jobs, but it's not the way I did it, right? When I work 2 jobs, I'm saving for my house, I'm saving to build my retirement, or want to make a really nice vacation, right? So I'm putting in some extra time. They're doing it just to survive, just to pay the bills, and they're still having to choose between medicine and groceries sometimes. That's not the America I believe in. And it's the first time that my daughters, I have a 25, now 26, 24, and 7. All right. And I got a stepson, 17, a stepdaughter, 14. This is the first time in my life that my children, my stepkids, are not guaranteed to have a better life than me if they're willing to work for it. That's the reverse of the American dream. You're seeing parents who paid their house off, taking a home equity loan to give their kids for a down payment, for their kids to be able to try to afford a house. That's the reverse of the American dream. It's supposed to be the other way around, right? You know, and so it's a sincere thought. It is sad to think, wow, could a kid born the way I was born, in Brockton and Roxbury, wherever, could he or she do what I did today if they're willing to work as hard as I did? And I don't know if they could. And so before I die, I want to be able to say I didn't just help myself and my family. I want to be able to say that, like, I made it, or at least I tried to make it a path for other people too.
It's about the bigger picture, right? And I think that a lot of people that, you know, maybe they're a little bit younger, maybe they're still in school, maybe they don't have a job or a career yet, maybe they don't have a family or kids. Once you get to that point, I feel like a lot of people's opinions change once they have responsibilities, right? And especially if it's in regards to children. And I could almost mimic what you're saying, where it's like, you know, I think about my kids' future. Like, I could have been fine just doing what I was doing, and all of a sudden you think to yourself, you know, you're making moves here, you're making moves there, but the fact remains is you want to leave the world a better place than what you grew up with, and the way that it's trending now. And that's one of the things that I, you know, try to talk about a little bit on my channel, is like, you want to leave it to be a better place for your own kids and their kids, and you don't want them moving halfway across the country from you because they can't afford to live in the town that they grew up in. And I see a lot of that happening, especially here in Massachusetts, where things are have just become just so unaffordable. One of the things that you want to change that you just mentioned is housing. And I think one of your plans, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, is you want to use public or federal land, correct?
Right.
In order to generate more housing. One of the biggest, obviously I am in real estate. It's a funny dynamic that happens here because people on one hand will complain about a housing crisis, specifically single family homes and multifamilies, because a lot of investors are scooping them up. You know, they're not a lot available, both single family and multifamily. But on the other hand, these people also don't want more homes in their neighborhoods, right? So it's a really hard dynamic here to try to figure out. But if you're using public or federal land, that would open up a little bit more opportunities to create, let's say, more subdivisions or more neighborhoods outside of these areas, correct?
100%. You know, I'm talking about both federal, you know, old military bases and things of that nature, and state owned as well. You then go and incentivize builders to build affordable housing. Obviously, we need to cut the red tape. We got to reform some zoning laws and get rid of these ridiculous mandates.
Yes, the stretch codes.
If you do that, listen, I talked to an affordable housing builder in New Bedford, and they won't build. And I said, well, why? He's like, and we're talking Section 8 for poor people, right? He said, because we can't tap into natural gas. It has to be electric. And he goes, and you can't charge enough rent to cover the electric bill, so we just won't build. Like, that's nonsense.
It is.
It's absolute nonsense. And then you look at someone, and it makes me angry. One of my challenges against Ed Markey is to not come off too angry.
Yeah.
Right? So that
it's hard not to be, though.
No, it's very hard not to, because I'm sitting here saying, okay, so you're the co-author of the Green New Deal, and you won't consider nuclear energy? Is it because and I don't mean to be mean, but is it because you're still in the 80s when Chernobyl happened?
Right.
Because, you know, the technology's improved. It's evolved. And we could put 4 small modular reactors across the Commonwealth, and it would power 40% of our 2.9 million homes here, residential homes, way cheaper, and it's carbon free, 97% efficient, 24/7. They won't even consider it. They want to talk about offshore wind.
I know.
And you know, and you talk, and I'm good with solar. Guess which one of us has solar panels on our house, me or Ed Markey?
You.
Of course, right? The guy that preaches about everybody lowering their carbon footprint in businesses hasn't taken one step himself. Now, I do it, and they're nice, but guess what? They don't work at 3 feet of snow.
Right.
And it's pitch dark at 4 p.m. in January. And so, but yeah, we can expand certain solar things, but this idea that they won't even consider it and they're pushing these special projects, it's just nonsense. And his plans actually keep us on fossil fuels longer in the long term anyways. And it's just theater, and people are really, really hurting. And it is hard not to be angry. If I was in my if I was my daughter's age, like, I'd be so pissed off at these career politicians. I mean, they're running $2 trillion deficits. They just hit the print button, and this magic money appears and devalues our dollars more and more every day. And something's got to change. And the only thing I could think of is to make a difference is to try to offer an option of someone like me. I don't have loyalty to a person or a party. I just loyalty to people. Like, my whole theme is people over politics. There's nothing, when you learn my life, there's nothing they can buy me with. I'm not interested in power. Money's not going to do it for me. I don't care enough about money. You know, if they're going to say, oh, here, you know, you can get this much more money in your life, that's not going to buy me off. And so, I just think we need people like that. You know what I mean?
I think so too. I think that, and that's one of my criticisms and why I don't like talking about, a lot of stuff on the federal government side is like, especially in Congress, is there's people there that they know the idea is bad, but they won't tiptoe across party lines. Like, look at John Fetterman, for example, right? I feel like he's a perfect example where, you look at some things, right? You pull the data on some issues or some items, and it could be completely backwards, and they want one party to agree with everybody. And if you even question or challenge, what they're trying to do, you get ousted, right?
That's right.
That needs to change, right? Because you could really have, like, another good example is the auditor, right?
Right.
I'm a Republican, the auditor is a Democrat. We may disagree on 75% of the issues, but we agree on the important issues, right? Like, you don't need to, that's one of the things. And I see the same thing, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I see the same dynamic that kind of happens in Congress, almost happens here in Massachusetts, where you very rarely will have somebody like the auditor, for instance, that'll kind of tiptoe, and rally up people on both sides of the spectrum to try to get something that's generally everybody would support. And there's people in her party that are probably mad at her for this, right?
There's no doubt about it.
I just feel like that only moves us backwards. It doesn't move us forward, right?
Of course not.
And I find it to be, that's why I don't like a lot of the stuff that happens federally, because I look at what they're doing and I'm like, this is crazy.
I mean, here's the thing, it's like, if you look at Seth and Markey's whole thing is, their whole reason to vote for them is that they'll fight Trump.
Yep.
Well, he won't be president in 3 years. It's a 6-year term. So your entire message to everyone in the Commonwealth is you'll fight against someone for 3 years. The other 3 years, we just what? You're just going to sit in your office? We need to offer a plan for people. If you're actually doing your job as a United States senator, it really shouldn't matter who the president is. And I mean that. So if you apply one test, Mike, is it good for Massachusetts and America? It is. Call it progressive. I don't give a shit. I really don't care, right? I'll vote for it, right? Call it conservative. I'll vote for it. If it's not good for Massachusetts and America, I'll fight it and I won't support it. If you just employ that test, then you can reach, I think, those compromises that need to be reached. I don't know when compromise became such a bad word. Because they're really the only bipartisan on that ship that I see in Washington is corruption. And I mean that sincerely. And if you bring up the audit, there's only one reason, in my opinion, to fight the audit this hard. It's because it's corruption. We're going to see SNAP fraud. We're going to see no bid contracts to friends and donors. We're going to see, nonsense that shouldn't happen. And it's unfortunate that we've gotten to that point, but hopefully the people in Massachusetts are ready for someone who just wants to represent them and not represent a party or a person or an agenda.
I agree with that. And the problem is when a lot of people, this is what I've seen, people will go in with good intentions, and then once they're in, they just, they become beholden to the speaker or they become beholden to their stipends. They have big ideas, and then they get in, and then all of a sudden you don't hear from them again, and they're done for. Basically, they just become another career politician. They stay in line. All of the ideas that they had are basically squashed. And I think that there's so many activists and nonprofits, and there's NGOs and all of these things that are happening behind the scenes that are really providing so much influence in these people that they just fall for it, right? Because they want the money, they want the power, they want this, they want that. And then absolutely nothing gets done. And the people that suffer are the people inside of the Commonwealth that are outside of politics. And then they're left wondering what the hell is going on. I'm trying to decide between, paying my electric bill or buying groceries for my family. Right. And I get these calls all the time. You know what happens to me? I'll be honest with you. The politician, this is what happens. This is the trajectory of somebody that's your regular Massachusetts citizen. They will call their state rep. They'll call whoever it is. They'll email them. They'll do whatever. And then they call me. You know what I'm saying? Because they're looking for some kind of connection or an answer to what is actually happening and what they could do. But the fact remains is the people that are making decisions on behalf of them, they don't want to answer to the people. That's a problem, in my opinion. And that needs to be changed, and that needs to be cleaned up, because Massachusetts needs to be good for everybody. It doesn't just need to be good for certain select people. That's what I see happening. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. And that's why I said, if you forced me on that first question of one thing, it attacked the corruption. I mean, how are these people saying that their first year, or just before they go into office, their net worth is minus 50,000, right? And then 5, 6, 7 years later, they're worth 20 million
or less.
Like, it's right. It's like, how is that possible? Like, it can't be done.
I know
it can't be done unless there's these NGOs, you know. And I asked this about Markey. Why would an 80-year-old guy, just let's be blunt, why would someone 80 years old who has been there in elected office for 53 years, when you count as state rep, right? 53 years. Why would you want to still be in Washington a half century later? It's because you get addicted to the lifestyle, and you get addicted to the swamp. His wife has worked for NGOs for 30 years. You know, I just learned this about Ed. I asked myself, why does this guy talk about the ice cream truck? Honestly, I know it sounds funny, but I was curious. Like, why does he talk about the ice cream truck? And I realized that he ran while he was at law school, got elected, right? Passed the bar, and 6 weeks after passing the bar, became a rep. He's never had a job other than driving that ice cream truck for 53 years. So that's the only thing he has. And that's insane, because you're never going to worry about housing when you're federally subsidized, right? When you have a federal pension that's guaranteed for life, you're not worried about the things that other people are worried about.
Correct.
When you've never cut a payroll check in your life, right? You don't understand what it's like to be a small business. And understand how these regulations can impact you, and how difficult it is to have a business here in Massachusetts. You're just never going to be able to relate to those people. And so I try to tell everyone, it's not about right versus left, Republican versus Democrat. The enemy are career politicians on both sides. If you've been in office for a couple decades, vote the bums out. I mean, it's my approach, you know, and that applies against Republicans too, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. I mean, you're going to have, I talk about that often. Sometimes when I'm giving a comparison, you normally say this more than likely happens on both sides of the aisle. I'm sure people maybe don't like hearing that, but a lot of times people don't like hearing the truth, right? They kind of want to put the blinders on. They kind of want to be naive about these things, but it wouldn't be fair for me to just, not talk about it in a genuine way. And that's essentially what I try to do. Here's another question for you. So you mentioned energy briefly, and obviously Markey was a co-author of the Green New Deal, right? Here's the thing. Healy has come out, and I'm not trying to make this a governor thing, but you know where this is going. So Healy has come out multiple times, and she said, oh, we're looking into this, we're looking into that. Well, show us proof you're looking into something, right? Like, I feel like a lot of people will talk about let's say the small modular reactors, but you don't get any kind of study or data, or like, there's been nothing, nobody's talked about it since then. Have you looked into doing this? Has there been any studies you commissioned or anything like that?
I mean, that I have?
Yeah, like that you've looked into?
Well, I know Mass Fiscal did an analysis showing that if we go nuclear is one of our things, the amount of the savings is off the charts.
Correct.
We're talking $5,000 a year at the minimum range, and up to $9,000 per household if we go nuclear as one of and obviously using natural gas as a bridge as well. And so there's studies out there that prove the point. Like, my hypothesis when I said to you, it's not a hypothesis actually, but when I said that we could power 40% of the 2.9 million residential homes substantially cheaper, it's based on those kind of reports and analysis. Right. I mean, Healy is saying those things because we're in an election year.
Yes.
Healy's saying that we're not a sanctuary state because we're in an election year, right? 65% of the voters are independent. unenrolled voters here. She went and got booed at the Red Sox game and all of that. So she knows that she has to appear more to central and not so radical left. But it's, if she's reelected, it'll be back to
status quo.
Every offshore wind. There'll be no commission. There'll be no nuclear. They celebrated shutting down any nuclear, and it's just unfortunate because and energy is such a big deal to me, because when you look at these offshore wind projects and you look at their alternative energy measures, it's a lot of grift to special interests. And then you can tie it to donors and all of that. Course. You can follow the money and you see why they're pushing it. I don't think they really care. I mean, I'm serious. I don't know if they're ignorant that people are struggling to the point they are, but I'm sitting with people and we're talking about they're truly choosing, they're like rationing their diabetes medicine in order to afford their groceries. That's just uncalled for.
It's sad.
And it's tragic. And so and then you see someone like Healy say, well, we're going to let, Neshoba Valley Medical Hospital close down in air. We're going to let Kearney Hospital close in Dorchester. We're going to let the maternity ward in Leominster close. There's nothing we could do. We got $8 billion rainy day fund. But, we're
maybe.
Not, right?
Yeah.
And we got $4 billion for the illegals over here, but we got nothing for you. So all those patients in Dorchester and Central Mass. I mean, there's if you're a pregnant woman in certain parts of North Central Mass, you got to drive 45 minutes to give birth. How's that for protecting healthcare? How's that for protecting women?
Right.
It's not. And so that's the stuff that really angers me. And we just need new leadership bad.
I agree.
And this election year is so important. You can't get any worse than it is here. And when I gave my announcement, that's why I made the point of like one party rules to blame. It's not because of COVID. It's not because of an accident or bad luck. And it's not just because of who's in the White House, because Tennessee, Florida,
North Carolina,
New Hampshire, Texas, they're all thriving.
Correct.
And so
that's not an anomaly. It'd be an anomaly if one state was thriving, but when you have multiple states that are thriving, and then when you see where the majority of the population is coming from into those states, which is a lot of Massachusetts, you think to yourself, something's going on in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, if we lead the nation in people leaving, if we are dead last in housing affordability, if we have the most expensive state for childcare, which we are, if we're the most expensive state for electricity in the continental United States, which we are, if we have 1.1 million people on food stamps, which is 16% of our population, soon to be 1 out of 5 people going to be on food stamps here. And then you think we have Harvard, MIT, we have the best hospitals, biotech. You scratch your head.
It doesn't make any sense.
You scratch your head and you're like, this is actually difficult to do. Like, how bad do you got to be to take a state like Massachusetts, right? With all of this brain power, with all of this tech, and put us with those stats. And so that's why I think this whole election thing is so important. And, I know some, the governor's race might not like my point, but when I said that I do believe my race to be the most important, right? And I'm sure Mike Minogue and we might want to jab each other, right, at which one. They're both all important.
Yeah, sure.
But 1/3 of our budget minimum comes from federal funds. And as a U.S. Senator, I can operate outside that supermajority on Beacon Hill, and I can fight for nuclear credits so that we can get nuclear projects right here, those tax credits. I can fight for funds to come back here, healthcare. These are our tax dollars anyways from Massachusetts that went to the federal government. You need an advocate to get those federal funds back, and we don't have advocates. We don't even have advocates when their party's in power. You know, because you take things like the infrastructure bill that had like $110 billion for bridges. None of it was allocated to the Cape Cod bridges. You know what I mean? So even when their guy's in office, they don't advocate. And certainly if they're going, their entire policy to a reason to vote for them is they'll fight against the current administration. Well, you know, you're not going to get anything for Massachusetts, because all you are is antagonistic,
right?
So hopefully people agree with that and will say, you know what, we're gonna give this new guy a chance. He's got some ideas. Let's see if he can get those ideas implemented.
So you're right, though. So what happens is, this is what I see. I don't care what side of the aisle that you're on or the president is on or something like that. You have to put your ideology aside, and what you need to do is you need to prioritize the people that you represent. So as you just said, even if, you know, Markey is in there and let's say there's a Democrat that's president, they're still not doing what they need to do, which would be the path of least resistance to get more money into the state that we're already sending the federal government. They're not even doing it when there's a Democratic president. Lo and behold, they're not going to do it when there's a Republican president either, right?
That's right. And they're not going to hold up a vote for a Democrat. They're going to be a loyal Democratic soldier. That's why I said we need someone who's not loyal to a party or a person or agenda. You know, President Trump, I get in office, President Trump, and they want my vote. Okay, well, we know Moulton or Markey or Warren, they're a no matter what.
Right.
I'm not a yes no matter what. I'm a like, what's Massachusetts get?
Correct. You got to make a deal.
Right? Like,
exactly.
What's Massachusetts get? That's what I need to know. Because, you know, I got 2 bridges that are federally owned that are functioning obsolete on the Cape. We got some infrastructure that needs to be taken care of here. We need some health care. We need nuclear. We need this. We need that. You want my vote? What's Massachusetts get? That's what you need. And I'll do that regardless of who the party is.
Sure.
And that's what we need. Hopefully people will see that and say that, let's not just vote the Democrat ticket. You know what I mean?
Of course. Well, I mean, you obviously, you seem like the type of person that wants to put who you represent before your own interest, right? So that's really what we need here in Massachusetts across the board. And, you know, we did talk about Maura Healey in the governor's race a little bit. What's your opinion on what do you think? You want to talk about this, or?
I'll talk about anything you want. Listen, I take pride in, I know where you're headed. I take pride in never shying away from any question, because I think people are ready for someone to just call it like it is. I assume you're talking about the governor's race?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, listen, it's unfortunate what we're seeing right now. And I've been up front from day one, obviously, and someone even like Jack Gately had made this comment, which was, it would be ideal if only one person came out of the convention, right? Because then there's no contested primary. Here's the thing that no one knows better than me, because I ran last time in 2024. A September primary is an incumbent protection program for incumbents. I knew when the other 2 fellas got on the ballot last time in 2024, you know, I still fought as hard as I could, but that was the first thing I needed to go my way to have a shot at taking out Elizabeth Warren, is that no one else could make the ballot. And when the other 2 did, it kind of sealed my fate, because it required me to then just fight all the way to September 3rd, right? To try to convince Republicans I'm the guy, and the conservatives, which is only 8%. Of a population. And so I won it by 65%, but I had 800 grand left. Elizabeth Warren had 25 million. And I spent my whole time trying to edit like 100 RTCs. And then I wanted to debate Elizabeth Warren September 4th, right? Nope. She waited until October 15th. Why? Because early mail-in voting began 10 days before. So when I stepped on stage with Elizabeth Warren, 25-30% of the votes had already been cast in Massachusetts. That's what the incumbent's going to do. And so as long as there is a contested gubernatorial race, Maura Healey isn't going to debate, right? She's going to say, well, we'll wait and see who wins the governor's race. And then she'll wait until October. Early mail-in voting will already started. It's the same process. It is a death kill having that late of a primary. And so I'll make it no secret about the fact that, I was hoping only one person would come out, regardless of which three. I liked all three, supported all three. I donated to all three. That wasn't the most fiscally conservative thing I've ever done in my life, right? But it would only be in the best interest of the party if there wasn't, because what's going to happen is the first ad by Maura Healey will be what a Republican said against another Republican. It'll be like, don't take my word for it. Let me show you what, and it could be short sleeve hitting McNogue. Let's say short sleeve were to pull off this upset in the primary, then it would be something negative said about short sleeve, which is starting to be seen online right now. And so it is a very unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I see this from obviously all different angles because the audience that watches my channel, there's independents, Democrats, Republicans, people from out of state, and different people were supporting, different candidates. And as you said, I liked all the candidates. I interviewed all of them. I think that people are kind of missing the forest for the trees here. That's my opinion. And what I mean by that is this. I see a lot of this inner party fighting between different Republican candidates or one talking point or another, and then somebody twists this one way or somebody twists it the other way from one candidate or another. And the fact remains, I don't think people realize, and you don't have to agree with me on this, but this is my theory. I think that right now, given all of the issues that are happening inside of Massachusetts, I think right now is the time where there could actually be a change. And now, all of a sudden, we're seeing all these things come out, all these different headlines about different people, different emails, different newsletters, and all these other things. I can understand one side of that. I could understand one part of this, then I could understand the other. And there's multiple truths that anybody could come up with here. But I feel like I don't want us to blow an opportunity that we have that's in front of us, because I don't know if we'll get it again. That's the thing. And then by the time, if Healey decides if she gets back in, she uses this to her advantage, guess what's going to happen? Things are only going to get more expensive. Things are going to get less affordable. People my age are going to continue to move out of the state. I don't want to see that happen, right? Yep. I don't want to see that happen. And beyond that, it's like, I've provided these, and I'm not the be all end all of what's morally right, morally wrong. I'm not always right. I'm not always wrong, right? But the fact remains, I talk about these issues that I talk about on my channel, and I'm putting the ideas out there, and I'm letting people determine what they are, what is bothering them the most. And the current administration doesn't even want to look into some of these issues with a forensic eye and say, you know what? And I don't care if it was because of me or because of a study or whatever, but they could at least come forward and say, look, on energy, we know we've made some mistakes. Okay. Right. We want you guys to be afford to live and thrive in Massachusetts. We don't want businesses leaving. We do not want people leaving. We messed up and we're going to try. They don't even have to say messed up. We went one route. We're going to try to pivot. I think people would appreciate that. But the fact remains, they don't even want to go that far. So that's what what I'm trying to get to is that the opportunity is here. If we can't win now, when will we win?
Well, I've always taken pride. If you look at my book, I say no fear, never give up. I've never given up. That's my sort of approach to life. Mm-hmm. But I have to be honest. If we don't get a seat at the table, and what I mean by that is if I lose the Senate seat, if we lose the governor's seat, if we don't pick up more state rep or state Senate seats, I don't know if we ever will. Mm-hmm. The question will be, is Massachusetts gone for good? Because you can't get any worse, it seems. I know it can, because trust me, it can. Like, we're going to go from 16% of people on food stamps to 20 in a matter of 2 years. So things can get worse. But I mean, if we as Republican, as the opposition party, can't get a seat at the table with the current state of affairs of Massachusetts, with the one party so arrogant and so corrupt that they won't commission an audit that 72% of the voters demanded, then I don't know if we ever will. And if we can't unite as a party when we have things this way, then I don't know, if we ever will. I mean, my biggest criticism is Republicans eating Republicans,
sure,
while the Democrats sit around and decide, right? People saying, well, he can't win because of this reason, and he can't win because of this reason. And so they make excuses for whatever reason, and they bicker and they fight and they slam and throw dirt. In the meantime, the Democrats sit back, keep doing that.
Right.
And we'll keep being corrupt, and we'll keep being in charge. And so, my fear is that, and we're already seeing it. I looked online this morning, and I see, people attacking Brian, and then you have some people saying, no, well, he made the ballot, so you this is our system,
yes,
and you don't anoint anyone. And I'm just trying to tell you, from a practical standpoint, a real contested primary is a absolute path to not winning. Matter of fact, there was a rumor that Mike McNogue, before he announced for governor, was going to get in the Senate race. It was a false rumor, all right, that consultants put out there. And I called Mike, and he told me, no, he wasn't getting the Senate race. I wouldn't be running. I wouldn't be running, even if I thought I could beat Mike or anyone else, right? Sheriff Lou was thinking, if he would have been in the race, was announced, I wouldn't have got in, because you can't win if you fight all the way to September 1st. I'm just telling you, there is not enough time. I'm not someone who's going to tell someone else what to do.
Sure, of course.
But I know what I would do.
I understand. And I respect your opinion and sharing that with me. And I'm in the same boat. I'm not going to try to tell anybody what to do or shift somebody's opinion one way or the other. I met these people. I like these people a lot. And I think that, I think that maybe what happens inside of Massachusetts may be like limited to Massachusetts. What I mean by that is this, is we are a Democratic supermajority here. Maybe something like this, and I'm just speaking freely here, this isn't what I believe or I'm advocating for, I'm just talking. But I would think that in a state like Massachusetts, you would really need to do everything in the right order, the right steps, in order to try to beat somebody like Maura Healey. That's a Democrat here. I feel like everything needs to be precise, calculated. Everything needs to line up. I think that maybe in other states, and again, I'm just thinking, I'm not advocating for this, but I think maybe in other states where it could be a little bit more purple or something like that, maybe you could get away with different things there. Massachusetts is a different story. It's so bad that all you need to do, if people really want to look, all you need to do is look at the charts of voters, go back 10, 15, 20, 25 years, Democrat, unenrolled, and Republican. And you could tell at one time there was more Democrats, right? Then it started to transition where a lot of these people that I'm thinking were more than likely Democrats went to unenrolled. So we have an entire state that's, 64% unenrolled or independent voters?
64.8.
64.8%. We have an entire state that is being represented by a Democratic supermajority that may not even be Democrats. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
I feel like that's a problem.
No, it's a problem. And here's the thing. You said that here in Massachusetts that things have to line up in order for us to win. And you're right. And then we're going to win by a couple percentage points, 1 to 2. It's either that or we're going to get beat by 15.
Win by a little or lose by a lot.
I mean, I'm just saying it's just the way it is.
Sure.
And so look, I got 1.35 million votes last time, almost 41% of the vote, 40.4%. And so, and we don't have a voice at the table. Those 1.4 million people have no seat at the table, right? All 9 members of the House are Democrats. Both U.S. senators are Democrats. Every statewide office is a Democrat. And so that's why I say we have to get a seat at the table. And, hopefully people will see the need to come together and do that and unite, because it really is our only chance at winning. It really is.
So what's another question I wanted to ask you? We talked about energy. We talked about Ed Markey. Seth Moulton. I don't even know that much about. I try to focus on local stuff. So in regards to Seth Moulton, what is he just basically like Ed Markey light? Is that what it is?
Well, if you look at his announcement video, his whole argument is vote for him. He's younger and he'll fight Trump harder. Seth was first known as more of a moderate Democrat, and he just learned a valuable lesson that you can't out left Markey. It just can't be done because he's went pretty far left.
Yeah, he's sick. Yes.
And he's no longer going to be considered a moderate. I mean, I think he will challenge Markey, make it closer than the race was in the Democratic primary 6 years ago against Joe Kennedy. Markey ended up beating him by like 10.5 points. I think Seth will make it closer, but I think Markey, I'll be able to pivot if it's not Markey and it's Seth. Like I'm not.
Yeah, sure.
I'll be ready for whoever, because the policies are the same. The message is the same. But most likely it'll be Markey because he's such a reliable, progressive left vote soldier. He's loyal to the Democratic Party to the extent. And listen, everybody needs to understand the kind of monkey wrench I'm trying to be. I've been told the Democratic plan and why Markey, when he announced and warned and everyone immediately said they would endorse him, is because he plans to retire at 84, right? 4 years from now. And if Maura Healey wins re-election, she gets to a point who sits in his seat till a special election, and that person is going to be Michelle Wu. And so, and she would get to sit as an incumbent for up to a couple hundred days before a special election. That's how they do. They're ready to anoint their next person in line, and that's why we had to fight it so hard, because that's a disaster.
Yeah, it's always I think people maybe realize, maybe my viewers realize, but some people don't realize this, is like in Massachusetts, it's such an extreme that you need to meet that extreme with equal or greater force to some extent, right? In order to win. That's my belief, and that's how I feel, because things have gotten so bad here for so many people. The middle class has effectively been scooped out of Massachusetts, right? That's really what's going on. And I feel sorry for these people, because it's a lot of people that I represent in real estate transactions. They might be selling, they may be going somewhere else, they may be trying to buy, they can't buy. And the fact remains is we need these people, right? We need these people. We need businesses to stay here. We need more federal funds to be coming in and not fighting the federal administration and not getting the funds back, right? Those are things that need to happen, and those are things that you represent.
No, 100%. We've got to have a common sense approach to solve these problems, and these problems are solvable. I do believe that. Like
every problem is solvable.
It really is, and we could solve them relatively quickly if we do it the right way. And but you have to have somebody who's willing to go in there and be willing to fight for those things. And unfortunately, we don't. And I'm hoping people are ready for someone who does.
I agree with you. John, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just if people want a yard sign, go to John Deaton for Senate. Let us know. Donate if they can. Obviously, I need the money too.
Sure.
And we can win this. This race against Markey is winnable. I think the race against Healey is winnable too. And hopefully we'll see a unification and we all can come together and,
That's what I'm
put our
hopeful.
best foot forward. I'm really hopeful that still will happen and we can fight for that seat, man, because if we don't get it, we're going to see more people leave. We're going to see our kids leave because they're not going to be able to afford the neighborhood they grew up in.
It's sad. Well, John, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, John. How was that? Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.